All right, I'm on another mission now. I've got a second mission. Everybody read this book.
Wonderful.
Iain, David, and Quinn started out to make a $50 million movie based on Ian's book, TJ's War. Mark, Sia, and Sincera soon jumped on board, and then Mr. Z joined the team, a mysterious executive producer who said, "Stop, this is no movie. This is a 2-season, 20-episode TV show. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series."
The story is there in the book, and the more it becomes something that will work on television and moves not a massive amount away from the book, but the more it does move away from the book, the harder it is for me to accept. So I would become at some point probably an obstacle to the production of the TV series.
Mm.
And I don't want to be that. I think whatever gets people to know this story. And my view is that they watch the TV series and go, "Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to read the book." That's really what I would like people to do.
Yeah.
If I'm brutally honest.
Yeah. Well, and they should. Everybody should read it. My dad's read it, and he loved it, as you know.
What's your dad's name?
He's called Mike. Well, he's actually called Malcolm, but he doesn't like the name Malcolm. So.
Oh, my youngest boy's called Malcolm.
Mike Shingler.
Well,
he's
thank
a
you,
legend.
Mike Shingler. All feedback.
Well, he said it was the best book, one of the, well, if not the best book he's ever read, and he read it so quickly as well. And you know, he's a tough northerner, and he said, "Oh, I was quite moved at times, Lisa. I was really quite moved."
Yeah, I'm from Inverness, and I still cried between 2 Fijian rugby players. We're not as tough as we think we are.
No, yeah. Oh dear.
What's the biggest moment you think you've had in your acting career? Is that an unfair question? Are you going to upset people by picking one?
Well, I just don't want to be an old bore and go back to Coronation Street. But the reason why I am going to say that is because I took a massive career break, which I would generally out because of circumstances beyond my control. And I stopped acting for pretty much 20 years. And that's when I started doing mainly voiceovers, voice acting. And it was still my dream. And it was still something I always thought I really, when I can, I really want to go back to acting. And in my heart, I was always an actor. And I spotted this course online, and it was something that really caught my eye. And I thought I wonder if I could go back into acting now. And I got an agent, and then COVID hit, and it was like, oh gosh, it's not really going to happen now. And then came out of COVID. It was very difficult to step back into acting for screen or theatre after such a long time. And I had just this sort of limiting belief, if you like, of well, I know who's going to employ me after all this time, even though I'm really proud of my CV and all the theatre and all the different teleseries I've done, the sitcoms and, I just didn't think it was going to be possible. And then out of the blue, I got this audition, a self-tape for Coronation Street the second time. And I just thought, well, you've got to be in it to win it. I have no idea how I got the tape because I hadn't had auditions for such a long time. And then I got it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's, such a long time since I've done anything. And So that has to be my biggest moment, because that was it. So now I'm on such a mission just to do what I love, and realize it's not too late. And actually, we're all designed to get better with effort. And I do believe that if you really, really focus, set out to achieve what you want to achieve, enjoy the journey and not the outcome, then anything's possible.
Yep.
And I see that in you, actually, with this. I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, and I love the fact that you're like, we are going to do this, especially to David, when David's like, well,
You know David.
Yeah, I know David. And so if your question is sort of the biggest thing, I think is that just coming back into acting now, and seeing this world of opportunities, because it's not just 4 channels when I first started. No. There's so much out there. There's so much being made. A lot more actors, of course, but we're all unique. We've all got something unique to offer.
Yeah.
And it is enjoying the process and not the outcome, because then disappointment, or, it's a different journey. So that's what I try. I'm not saying I do it all the time, but that is definitely what I try to do. Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming towards the end of this. What are you doing now?
What am I doing now? I'm still doing my voiceovers. I still have my voiceover business, if you like. I have my studio at home. So lots of radio ads. I generally do a lot of radio ads with my very North Yorkshire accent, which is very in vogue at the moment. I actually did one for Scarborough Summer Fair a few days ago. I was like, I can tell all my family. So yeah, that's nice. But yeah, I'm writing to casting directors. I'm working on my craft again. I'm doing auditions. I did an audition this morning. That's why this is behind me, because this is my self-tape backdrop.
Good.
Because most auditions are self-tape before you get in.
I was going to ask you about the self-tape when you were talking about Coronation Street. So how does that happen? Do they ask you to provide a self-tape, or do you just send one in on the off chance? What's going on there? How does that process work?
You have to be generally invited to provide a self-tape. So your agent, if you have an agent, will a brief will go out to all the agents, or particular agents that the production company likes to work with. Sometimes they just do everybody. Sometimes they're quite specific. And also have you heard of Spotlight? It's like an actor's directory online for, pretty much every actor, working actor is on there. And that's where it's a go-to for casting directors everywhere, really. So, and your CV's on there, and your show reel's on there. And they can sometimes put a brief on there as well. Sorry.
I know, you're just making me think, you just have to wait the whole time. There's nothing you can be proactive about. You have to wait until somebody invites you.
No, you see, I always thought that was the case. And it was a long time ago that you had to wait for your agent to phone and say, okay, you've got this audition. Okay. I don't know. Am I allowed to sort of mention I've mentioned Spotlight. So Act on This, right? I discovered Act on This, which is so fantastic. It's run by Ross Grant, who's also an actor. He's from Manchester. And he got so fed up of sort of waiting for jobs to come to him or his agent to phone, that he completely thought outside of the box, and listen, I won't go into this too much because we'll go off track. But what he promotes is, again,
Where's the track?
doing Loop the Loop at the moment.
No
It's
track.
one of those roller coasters. So, right, back to Loop the Loop.
Back to Ross Grant.
Ross Grant. Is that he gets on, one thing that is part of it is that he, if you're a member, you can watch casting directors, sometimes actors. I find the casting directors really, really useful. So it might, really big casting directors in America and here, they'll come on and they'll say, look, we want you actors to write to us because it's our job to know who you are. Mm-hmm. And yes, there might not be a job for you right now, but if we're interested in what we see, we will file you. And, next time we want a northern blonde blabbermouth, we will go to that folder and we'll find Lisa Shingler. So I didn't know this. I thought it was kind of a bit rude or a bit desperate to contact casting directors or even directors. But it's not the case. And it's not the case that... So the answer to your question is no, I don't just wait for work to come to me now. Now I am proactive. And it's really empowering because you feel like you're doing something. It doesn't matter if you don't get that audition. You never know, a couple of years down the line, they'll go, oh, I had that letter from that blah, blah, blah. Where's that blonde northern blah, blah, blah. She's perfect. But it might be 2 years, it might be 10 years. But you're sowing all those seeds, you're sowing the seeds that could grow rather than just waiting. And so I think the world is very different now for actors. And I think still a lot of actors aren't proactive, or because they probably think like I did, that I used to feel like don't do that or makes you look desperate, or it's just having a bit more control over your career, because at the end of the day, if you've got something to offer, I'm not saying write a letter or email that's paragraphs long. Keep it short and sweet and to the point. And be helpful.
It's a number of years ago now since you graduated from Guildhall, but there'll be lots of young actors. I would hope there'll be lots of young actors listening to you here. How do they go about getting an agent?
Well, there are different routes, and I don't think there's necessarily a right way. My husband, he actually teaches at a drama school part-time and directs because he's also a working actor. And at the end of their term, or actually the end of their course, they will have a showcase, an actor's showcase. So this drama school is in Soho, so it's very central. So agents will be invited. It's very difficult to get them to come along, though, because they're busy and, but they, a lot of them have got agents that way. If you don't go to drama school, because I don't believe that it is the only route to being an actor at all, you can, put on your own shows. There's so much fringe, really good fringe that's been made. And it doesn't necessarily have to have a big budget either, or even making your own short films, and then sending it out there and reaching out to the agents. Yeah, and not being afraid to write to them.
Yeah, you've got to go to them rather than sort of waiting for them to come to you.
Well, yeah, because they've got to know a way of finding you, haven't they?
Yeah.
But then there's also social media now, this is another beast, a helpful one in some ways, and can be an absolute minefield in others. But the younger generation, which I'm not really part of now. But, it's like my daughter. I don't let her go on social media yet. But even now, she just knows how it all works. And I think you can promote yourself very well on social media now. And you could target agents by, if you're great at comedy, writing a comedy sketch, getting somebody to film it. Mobile phones are amazing, the cameras on them now,
It's true.
Stick it into some free iMovie software, or there's many other ones. Stick that out there on social media. Say some nice things on when agents posted something online. Put a little link to your new comedy scene. There's lots of ways. There's so many opportunities now. And also, I think that if you have a plan, that I'm only learning this now. I just wish that I just wish that I learned a lot of what I'm learning at the moment years back.
Yeah, well,
but it's a different world.
You're not the only one with that one.
Yeah. So, and just to have a plan. So say you do want an agent, you go, instead of, a lot of people, they don't achieve their goals because it's such a broad, it's just it's all with broad strokes, it's not specific enough, the kind of steps to achieve that goal. So say it is getting an agent, and not to make it overwhelming, because then people will just give up and it's just too much. So if you want an agent, to be specific about what kind of agent you want. Is it a theatrical agent you'd like, or is it an agent that's predominantly screen? Is it one up north? Is it one in London? And you can get a directory on Spotlight of all the agents, for instance. There are lots of places where you can get a directory, and Act on this, where you can, find all the agents. Look at credits on things you like watching on telly.
Good one.
Look them up and see what agent they're with. Obviously not like Tom Cruise. Probably won't get his agent. but you never know. Maybe you would. Do you have an agent?
No. I had an agent for the book, a literary agent, and she was initially very keen, but then she started writing her own book, and I realized after about 3 or 4 months that she hadn't actually done anything at all. So we came to a mutual agreement to part ways, and that was about 2 months ago. And I really haven't gone after another agent since, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure in terms of literary agent what benefit they would now bring to this. The book is published. It's got its own life now, and I'm not really intending to write another book. But maybe if I was, I might get an agent then. But I couldn't get an agent for love nor money when I first published the book, because everyone during the pandemic had written a book, and so all the normal literary agent avenues, they simply said, we're not accepting submissions. So it wasn't even that they didn't like the book; they never saw it, wouldn't look at it, and So I can see the advantage of having an agent for acting and for books when you first bring a book out, because it would have been good at the time to because you can't get to a publisher without a literary agent. So I had to self-publish.
Right.
But that's been quite successful. So if you can't get a literary agent, anybody out there, and you want to publish a book, just do it anyway. Amazon's one option. That's one I chose, but there's others out there as well. And you're cutting out a lot of middle people. And in my case, I find that to be quite useful.
Well, it can overcomplicate things, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you advertise your book apart from it being on Amazon and the this
Well,
podcast?
I did a series of radio adverts about this time last year, and that pushed the sales up a bit. That was
Great.
quite unusual. David did the spiel for that one, and
Yeah, would have been great.
so that was good.
Yeah.
But in general, it's word of mouth because it's a big book, and it's not exactly cheap. It's the hardback version is about 23, 24 pound.
Yeah.
And trust me, I
Worth
do
it.
not make very much
Worth
money
every
on that.
second.
That's the cost of the book.
No, I
But
imagine. I imagine.
but
Yeah.
it's word of mouth, and people. I've had a number of people now buy copies for people at Christmas. So there's people who feel, oh, I want to give this book to you for your Christmas because you've got some connection with the war or with the military or whatever it might be, and
Yeah.
so that's been very successful as well,
Yeah.
and it's growing.
No, I'm sure.
Just slowly expanding out there.
Yeah. You see, it's tricky with this. I imagine that it's very tricky doing these podcasts, not giving the spoilers away about the story, but getting the interest,
Yeah.
you know.
So I think it's really down to people's reactions, like your reaction, and I'm very pleased that a lot of people have had similar reactions to that. They've read the book, and it's really impacted them, which is what I want. I mean, you'll see me say this on lots of podcasts, but it's my attempt. It's my little attempt at world peace. Because I just keep asking the question, why? Why, with the level of intelligence our civilization has reached, are we still having wars? I mean, does nobody learn anything from this? It's just madness.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, if it can make a difference, that's why everybody should read this book, you know. All right, I'm on another mission now. I've got a second mission. Everybody read this book.
Wonderful. What about your? Have you got any connection with World War II?
Well, my grandparents, my nana Snow, my mum's mum, she used to sing to the troops.
Really?
Yeah, it's the Scarborough barracks. There were barracks there, and also in Moulton, which is about, I don't know, 40 minutes away from Scarborough. So yeah, she used to.
When was this?
Well, sometime during the war. I don't know that. I don't
I'm
know.
just wondering if it was in the build up to D-Day, because there was troops all over the place at that point.
Yeah. Oh, I should ask my mum. I should ask my mum and dad. But at Moulton, my grandfather was there doing a sort of, did desk job for a while there. But then he went out in the tanks. So he was, yeah. So it's funny, he never really talked about the war. I would ask him when I was younger, especially when I was doing my GCSEs, I remember, and we were learning about World War II, and he didn't want to talk about it at all. I didn't get any information from him. And then when he was a lot older, and he was sat in his armchair, and he used to sit there. And I spoke to my mum and dad about this the other day, and I said, "Do you remember Gar just sitting in his chair with his whiskey? He loved his whiskey, and we'd all be in the room and chatting about various things, and then he'd just sob. He'd just sit there and sob quietly." And I said to my mum, "Do you remember that?" She goes, "I don't remember that." And I said, "But he did." And I asked my nana, and I said, "Why is Gar crying?" And she's always he's probably thinking about the war.
The tanks were dreadful.
Because
being in a tank in the
if you
Second
think
World
that
War.
you're sat in a chair and you're, because he couldn't really do anything in his latter years. So all you've got is your memories, isn't it? Your memories and He might not have been. He might have been crying because I don't know, that his back hurt or something. I don't know, but there's just this deep sadness, and I do remember it quite well,
Well,
very well, vividly. Yeah,
the the British got a lot of their tanks early on from the Americans. They had the Sherman tank, which was
yeah,
a bit smaller and faster than the tanks that they had up until that time. So they got them. They came across the Atlantic in the convoys, and then the British got into them, and they were dreadful. The Germans called them Tommy boilers because if they got hit with a shell or anything really, the explosives inside would get knocked together and blow up. And lots of, I mean, if they blew up at all, then the entire crew of that tank were killed immediately, burnt to death or whatever. But the thing is that other tank crews would see this. Because even
mm,
though they had limited vision, as you're moving along with your tank, you've got them in front of you, behind you, beside you. You could see this, and it's very, very tough to go through that, and then you've survived, and then get back into that tank the following day and do the same thing again and again and
yeah,
again and again,
yeah,
and know that if you that was going to be your fate if you got hit. So
yeah,
that would. I mean, I'd probably be sitting in a chair crying if I thought about that afterwards as well, if I was
yeah.
lucky enough to survive.
Well, there you
And
go.
the other one was not the Shermans because they just blew up, but other British tanks, if they got hit by a shell, it would cause an amount of metal on the inside to come off and then spin around at very high speed all the way around the inside of the tank. And it would just turn the crew into mincemeat. And there was an army chaplain who was recognized after the war for his efforts because up until he came along, the new crew for that tank, because it was still a usable tank, even though the crew had been wiped out, the new crew would have to get into that tank and clean it out. And you just imagine the psychological effects of doing that. So he
Yeah,
refused to let them do that. It became his job because that's what he volunteered to do. It became his job to go into the tank and clean it before a new crew would be allowed to go in there, so they didn't have to face that. But horrendous
horrendous. Yeah,
existence,
absolutely
and
horrific,
and I
horrific.
and I, and I just think there's so many ways that a war affects people, so that if you survive, you are living with that for the rest of your life,
Yeah,
and that's not just the Second World War. We've
yeah,
got people going to wars all the time. We've got special services, special air service, and special boat service, and the rest going out to Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever it might be,
yeah,
and they're not being replaced, so they're being left out there until they become nervous wrecks. And
yeah,
then the streets of London, the streets of Manchester, they're filled full of ex-servicemen and women who can't reintegrate into society, can't cope with what they've experienced, and
no,
know that the people who are around them now have got no understanding of what they've gone through.
no,
And we're not
no.
looking after them. We're not looking after them. We're not learning anything.
Yeah, I totally, totally agree with you. It's 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 just awful. It's horrific, and it's so frustrating. And yeah, it's like how can you actually come back from witnessing, all the things that your dad saw in the war, and like we're talking about my granddad, and he went into Belsen a couple of weeks
Well,
apparently after it was liberated. you know that was such a powerful, powerful chapter in your book. Oh, I sobbed all the way through that, but I needed to read it. It's um it's like how do you come back from seeing things like that, experiencing things like that? So yeah, yeah, you need a lot of help, and like you say, there isn't a lot of help out there, is there?
no, there is
So
not.
yeah,
Quite
my
understandable.
dad's dad was a dentist in the war, And I think it was the battle. Yeah, it was the Battle of Bulge. Battle of
Battle of the
Bulge.
Bulge, yeah.
Yeah. See, that's my northern bulge. So, and he was. Oh, my dad told me. I mean, it's not a funny story, but it's at all. But they'd set up a medical centre, and my grandfather, Pop, was one of the lead medics, and even though he was just a dentist. Anyway, they heard that they had to leave their base, the medical centre, because the Germans were they needed to be pushed back, or there was something. I don't know the ins and outs, but anyway, his commanding officer told my grandfather that he needed to stay with an orderly to protect with the medical centre because of all the equipment, because of the really, really expensive equipment. Get there in the end, and they couldn't take it with them because they had to leave quickly. So my Pop was left. Luckily, they were fine. The Germans didn't get to them, and nothing happened. But my dad said to me that when Pop was left there with this orderly, he said, "Right, if the Germans come through that door, we're going through that door." He said, "Sod the equipment, we're out of here." But luckily, they didn't have to. They were the lucky ones.
God.
Yeah.
Great stories.
Yeah. Well, your book's full of them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're coming down to the last, let's say, 30 seconds. Is there anything you want to promote?
Your book. I do. I'm going to do it. Actually, after this, I'm going to go outside and sell them on the street corner.
Isn't that where we started?
Oh dear! Look, I'm blushing. I don't know why, but anyway, yeah.
All right. Well,
it's very warm. It's very warm by the seaside.
Lisa Shingler.
Yeah, but I'm serious. No, I've got nothing. Just I just want you to do well. I just think you deserve every success. Genuinely, from the heart, I mean that.
Thank you, Lisa Shingler. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And
I've loved it.
I am certain that we're going to see very much more of you after a 20-year break. We're going to see a lot more of you on TV and film too. And I mean, we can already hear your voice in adverts and so on. You're very special. Thank you very much for being part of this podcast team.
Oh, thank you, Iain. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com. And to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series.